Emotional Intelligence, Part 1. According to Peter Salovey, Mark Brackett, and John Mayer in their book Emotional Intelligence, Key Readings 2004, there are four components of emotional intelligence. The first one is perceiving emotions, recognizing emotions in oneself and in others. Secondly, ability to use emotions to facilitate and direct thinking. Third, understanding one's own emotions. And fourth, managing these emotions. The question arises as to what kind of intelligence emotional intelligence is. Is it just a variation of other forms of intelligence? The usual intellectual urge is to simplify and unify and argue that there is one traditional measure of IQ, and other suggested forms of this measure are either parasitical upon it or metaphorical. But now we have research provided evidence of the existence of multiple intelligences. We can reasonably side with Howard Gardner, who has researched extensively recently, that is, on multiple intelligences, and much in human history points in this direction. Not so long ago, someone commented in another course that only history will provide the definitive judgment of effective leadership. This person could have argued further that these identified successful leaders displayed certain characteristics that present-day leaders should emulate. True enough, but history also reveals the prevalence of many skillful intellectual problem solvers who were at the same time socially incompetent and virtually inept when it came to successfully performing even the simplest of mundane tasks. Furthermore, I suspect that a closer glance at history's most successful leaders will reveal many who were genuinely ignorant, certifiably stupid, or nearly incompetent politicians, hardly the sort of intellectual criteria we should seek to incorporate. It may well be that there are different kinds of emotional intelligences as well. Perhaps one sort of intelligence that is more intuitive and built into the emotions themselves, some of which may be non-reasonable, and another kind of intelligence that is more thoughtful and reflective, reasonable, and managerial. Let's look more closely at what an emotion is and what it's related to, and what functions emotions have, and what purposes are served by emotions. I think that there are three fundamental species of emotions. Passions. Three fundamental species of passions. Emotions, moods, and desires. What all passions have in common is their ability to provide meaning to the circumstances of our lives. Our emotions can turn routine encounters into dramatic tragedies or comedies. Our moods tune us in or turn us off to both the bright and the dark aspects of the features of our world. Desires convert mere dreams and fantasies into realistic plans for the future. Mundane facts into conquests and frustrations. Mere possibilities into practical ambitions with realizable goals. Every value and every meaningful, as well as everything offensive and painful, comes into life through the passions. Without the passions, the very conceptions of happiness, joy, anger, resentment, frustration become unintelligible. Of the three kinds of passions, emotions appear to be the most sophisticated and complex. It is the web of our emotions that defines human subjectivity. Through our passions, that is, through our emotions, through our moods and our desires, we constitute our world. We render it meaningful and valuable. Emotions are judgments about the world, so that anger and rage and jealousy and resentment, joy, love, sadness, sympathy, etc., are not just mere reactions or responses to the world. They are the way that we view the world, the way that we structure the world. An emotion is a judgment or a set of judgments, something we do. Emotions are judgments that constitute our world. And a judgment is number one, it's an opinion or an estimate formed after some sort of deliberation, of course, and it's also an assertion of belief. Emotions are structured by judgments that can be wise or foolish, warranted or unwarranted, appropriate or inappropriate, and therefore can either be reasonable or not reasonable. To claim that an emotion is reasonable is to be able to prove that it is sensible, within the bounds of common sense, in other words, warranted by evidence and right on target. As a bit of an aside here, I'm using reasonable instead of rational because I believe that most of our judgments are not the products of rationality, as rationality is defined in this way. Rationality is the intentionally persistent and consistent use of the principles, rules, and laws of logic and probability in problem-solving situations. Excuse me. An emotion is non-reasonable. It's not reasonable if it is not sensible, if it is unfair, unwarranted, and off-target. Anger is reasonable when it is aimed at the right person, for the right reason, at the right time, and in the right proportion. Panic and rage are not reasonable to the extent that both do not involve a specific intelligence, definite attention, choice, judgment, and planning. However, it can be argued that they are reasonable and indeed rational to the extent that they contribute to an evolutionary survival strategy.